Our guest today has been in the background of Manchester music and music in general. Out of choice in many ways. He's been a bit of a star since he was 19, although refused to be a star. Big on the music scene, especially on the dance scene. Songwriter, producer, DJ, mixer, the lot. Please welcome Mark Hadfield.
Good morning.
Did I miss anything out?
No, I think that pretty much covers it, yeah.
But it is strange, because when I first met you, I think you were 19.
Yes, I was. Yeah.
You just had a big club hit with Rhythm Quest, Closer to All Your Dreams, which did chart around number 40.
Yes.
But it was on your own label, wasn't it?
No, it was actually on a label out of Birmingham called Network Records. And basically, when I'd put the demo together, we'd sort of pressed it up onto white label. I'd been round to all the Manchester cool record stores, and I was stood at the end of Eastern Bloc Records at the counter, and Sasha came in and Justin Robertson, and they were all getting the records and they wouldn't even look at me. It was one of those, I was like, who's the young kid at the end of the counter? So I stood there for over an hour, and then I said, I've got this cassette, I've done this demo. Would you listen to it, please, and tell me what you think? And they said, the staff said, just a minute, stop the music. There's some young kid here who's brought a demo. He wants us to have a listen. And they were all like, oh, really? Go on then, put it on. So they played it, and they were like, I saw the faces change, and they were like, actually, it's pretty good, this. If you get this pressed up as a white label, which back then was like, white labels were sold in record shops, they would sell it. So I pressed them up, went round to their spinning discs, Manchester Underground, gave them so many records. It was doing really well. And then I got a few labels coming in, knocking on my door, saying we'd like to sign it. And I was trying to make the decision, and it was Gerald Simpson, a guy called Gerald, who was one of my, someone who I looked up to a lot. And I said to him, I don't know who to sign to. And he said, well, you could go with this label for this, you could go with it, but I'd go personally with Network Records because they have Derek May, who's a Detroit techno legend. They have Kevin Saunders.
That's who he loved, wasn't it?
Yeah. So, and I wanted to be Gerald, and Gerald wanted to be them. So I ended up signing with Network Records, which was a good move for me. It was a good fit. Great guys down there, and you could work with them, really closely, and they would give you freedom to do what you wanted to do, which as my career progressed, you find the larger labels want to be a little bit more involved in the creative process.
I mean, what's interesting about that, because you're talking, maybe 1991, was it?
Yeah, it was, 91,
So, but at that, had you have gone into that record shop in 1988 or 1987, they would not, no, they just wouldn't have played your cassette there and then. Right. Because obviously at that time, it was like so much stuff was coming through from Manchester. Yeah. And all that. So the worst thing you could do is, I don't want to miss out on what might be big.
Right.
There was that fear of missing out, FOMO everywhere, so it was actually good for everyone at the time, because it was like, oh, this might be good. Yeah. Because half the time it's just getting your stuff listened to.
Exactly. And I don't think you would these days. I mean, it's difficult these days, as much as you've got the internet and you've got a lot of outlets, there's so much out there, it's difficult to be heard, whereas back then, there wasn't as much music.
Well, it's also difficult to go, well, is this any good or not? Because now with Pro Tools, everyone can come up with a decent demo, whereas back in the day, if you're a band, it took ages to make something sound good.
Oh, yeah.
And a lot of money, a lot of expense. And I mean, even for you, how much did it cost you to do that demo?
I was quite fortunate because I was an assistant engineer, mix engineer at Moonraker Studios in Manchester. So I was allowed to use some downtime. They used to give me the sessions that nobody else wanted. So in the daytime, I'd make cups of tea and coffee for artists. And in the evening, if there was someone who didn't have a big budget, they would put me in with them overnight to record them and mix them. So when it wasn't being used on downtime, I was allowed to use the time overnight to craft. It was basically working on my own sort of skills, and I developed this song. So the people who used to come into the studio, say like Colin Thorpe from Chapter and the Verse, he was a keyboard player, so I asked him if he could play some keys on it. Anif from Chapter and the Verse helped out. So it didn't actually really cost us any money to record the track. It cost us money to press the white labels up.
I mean, Moonraker itself is an interesting story, isn't it? Because that was somewhere that Mike Harding built in Longsight to record his kind of comedy albums.
Yeah.
you know, because it was, you know, because that's where the big expense was in those days. And it was only him on kind of stage with an acoustic guitar, really, you know, and maybe he might add a piano or something for the odd thing. So it was quite basic.
Yeah.
Because that's where Chris Nagel started, who ended up working, you know, at Yellow 2 and Strawberry. Because
Pete Beckman, there's a few of them who came.
Well, he was 16. He was in my class at St. Bede's, Chris Nagel.
Right.
I'll tell you a few stories about him. But it was like, so Mike Harding had sold it, obviously, before you worked there. I mean, how did you get a job at Moonraker?
So originally, it was a garage.
Yeah.
They used to fix cars in there. He bought it and he converted it into a studio. I left school and I wanted to get into the music industry. And it was either going into graphics, and because I love drawing, and you know, or it was going into music. And my dad didn't want me to do any. He wanted me to be a scaffolder. My mum said to me, you know, I'll support you for a few years, you know. And back then it was the Yellow Pages. You didn't have the internet. So I went through from start on A of the Yellow Pages of studios around the area, calling them all up from the phone box, you know, and everybody said, no, we're not prepared to sort of give you a role. And it was, I was offering my services for free. I just wanted to be involved. And then I got to Moonraker and I phoned them, and it was Lee Monteverdi, LMC.
Oh, right, yeah.
And he was the engineer there at the time. And he said, no, I'm afraid we're not looking for anyone. And I said, look, just before you let me go, I came down on a school trip about 6 months ago. I wanted to see a real recording studio. My music teacher brought me down and you showed me around. And he said, okay, then come down for a chat. So I went down for a chat, and he said, look, if you can set up a YTS scheme, a youth training scheme, which was the thing back then, we'll bring you on. We'll take you on as an assistant. So on the first day, I went and did 4 weeks training. And then on the first day, he said, arrive at 10 o'clock. So I got there at 8 o'clock because I wanted to look keen.
Nobody there.
And there was nobody there. The shutters were down. But it was a Monday morning. It was hammering down with rain. And I sat there till 5 o'clock and nobody arrived. And in the rain, I didn't want to move because if I got wet, I was getting soaking wet, but I didn't want to move because if I went to grab some food and they arrived, they wouldn't know that I'd been there all day. So I waited, and at 5 o'clock, Lee turned up to do a session, and they were doing an evening session. And he said, what are you doing here? And I said, it's my first day, you know. And he said, oh, I'm sorry, nobody's told you. The boss won't pay your wages. There's no job for you. And I think he saw me just like this disheveled thing. And he just said, look, go to college and come down on your free time and you can help out. So that's how I integrated myself in. I started going there, just helping out. And within a year, the ownership changed over from Mike to a guy called Colin Goddard, and he gave me the YTS position. So that's how I worked my way into Moonraker. And from there, I became, first I was an assistant engineer, but quite quickly graduated to a full-blown engineer. And then I got my record deal. So at that point, I went into production and being an artist.
I mean, you'd learned so much at such a young age then, hadn't you?
Yeah. I was fortunate. I mean, we had a small 8-track recording studio at my school. So I used to go in there and I'd play in there. And there was I think it was sort of the late 80s, 88, 89, there was a CD called Sound of the North. North, the Sound of the Underground, and it was like T-Coin.
Oh yeah, and Annette, like yes, Dream 17.
Right. No, he was a brilliant album.
Tyler Brox's mum.
That's right, but the one song that stood out for me was Voodoo Ray.
Oh yeah.
Or Gerald, because I'd never heard a 303, Roland 303, which was like this little machine which made the squelchy acid house noises, and that was the first song. I was like, wow, I'm getting goosebumps now. So And I recorded it onto the 8-track, and when the girls used to come in at lunchtime and say, Mark, what are you working on? I'd play them Voodoo Ray and say, this is my new tune.
And they didn't know.
And then it became a hit. So when I was working in the studio at Moonraker when I started off, Gerald, who did that record, was in the studio recording his album. And I used to have long hair and flares. I was a drummer in an indie band. And he said to me, we were sat down on the sofa one day, and he said, well, looking at you, he said, I take it you're into like indie, into the Stone Roses and that. I said, yeah, I love the Stone Roses, Happy Mondays. I said, but I love acid house. And I told him the story, about Voodoo Ray. And he was like, I love that. He said, you could come in here, no problem, work on my album with me. So I was able to sit in with Gerald and see what he was doing. Like I said, we chapter in the verse with a lot of different acts around the Manchester area.
I mean, who attracted all that dance music into Moonraker? Was that because of Lee Monteverdi?
I think at the time it was one budget. Yeah. Because if you think about it, you didn't have a big budget. If you were most of the time, because it was a movement that was in its sort of
very underground, wasn't it?
Yeah, and it was just in its sort of, it was just starting to come up, and there wasn't a lot of money, so you would look for studios around Manchester which didn't charge a lot of money, and also they had a few bits of equipment. And what you would do back then, you would borrow your friends' keyboards. So if I had, say, a Roland Juno 106, one had an N-Sonic, they'd lend me theirs and then I'd lend them mine. And so because you didn't have a lot of equipment to work on, and you'd be getting the bus down through Levenshulme to the thing thinking, oh, I hope nobody takes my keyboard.
Oh, yeah, but when you had to come from Droylsden, was that not 2 buses?
It was 2 buses, yeah, to Bellevue and then further up. So,
all the rough bits.
Yeah, that's it. And you was with these sort of equipment under your arm, sort of scared to death that someone might sort of take them off you. But that was basically... And then once sort of, it became a bit of a creative hub then, because we had a little sort of chill out area and people would just call by and you'd say, oh, say it was Johnny J, for instance, or... So
when did Johnny J first turn up at Moonraker?
The first time I met Johnny, he was recording the Family Foundation.
Right, so that was 91, 92.
That's right, yeah. And he came in and Lee was mixing the 7-inch, the pop version, but he wanted something a bit more raw for the dance floor.
Oh, was that Express Yourself?
That's right, and Express Yourself. So he'd had Rachel McFarlane in, who's an amazing vocalist. He'd had Denise in. He'd had Diane Charlemagne in. So he had a lot of big Manchester, real big vocalists coming in, recording with him. And so I got to meet all them, and he was looking for a rougher mix, like I said, for dance floors. And Danny D said, why don't you use Mark? He goes out to all the clubs, he knows the sound. So I got put on duties for mixing the 12-inch mix of Express Yourself. And, I sort of co-produced it with him. I arranged stuff and we did a lot of work together. And that's when I first met Johnny. So,
right, because you became like his protege for
that's
a while,
right.
didn't you?
Yeah.
Getting all the bad advice off him.
So basically, I had a lot of good people around me who were a little bit older. They'd seen a little bit more.
I mean, the number of hits that little coterie produced, if you think, well, obviously, Enif and Colin, it was, Voodoo Ray, guy called Gerald,
we had
Johnny Urban
coming in for the
Urban Cookie Collective with Dan Charlemagne singing on it.
Yeah.
Rachel McFarlane, LMC with Lee Monteverdi, number one reckon.
Tiempo was in all the time, Adam Clough and Guy. They'd come in. We had so many. Rolo used to come up from London and use the studio because he wanted to work in that environment. We had all sorts of people.
I mean, mega hits though, out of one little studio built by a folk singer comedian.
That's it. And it was. I mean, I remember going in when they were mixing the Tiempo single, and it was a Sunday morning, and I'd been out to a club, so I was a little bit rough, and I just went straight to the studio, and I walked in, and it was like who's who in these 2 rooms, and it was brilliant. I thought, this is like, you don't see this anywhere. And I've worked in studios all over the world and seen some great things where you'll go down to the cafeteria at lunchtime and, say it was Sam in London and places like that, and you've got massive artists in. But up north, you don't see anything like that. And to see everybody, it was like this youth club, but everybody was being successful and everybody was pulling each other up and going, do you need a hand with this? I think you should change this. And you could play them your songs and say, I'm working on this, what do you think? And they'd be like, I don't think that chorus hook is strong enough, or I changed that bit there. So everybody had a role in each other's records.
So after Rhythm Quest and all that stuff, when did Loveland come along?
So that was, I left Moonraker. I was doing my Rhythm Quest thing for a few years, and then Pete Waterman had, it was John Barrett when they had the 380 label via Pete Waterman that approached me.
Well, that was with Johnny J. So John Barrett, who used to manage Easter House back in the olden days in Manchester, and then also worked as a producer on the Hitman and Her, which created a lot of big hit records. Bet people forget that, especially for northern bands, like all the stuff like Bass Heads, K-Class, you know.
And even Take That, you know, they had them as dancers and then they became part of Take That. And, you know, he had a big influence on the scene back then. And obviously he used to do the Hitman and Her with Pete. So they set up this label and they wanted me to sign for them then. And I was like, no chance. And he was like, why not? I says, I don't like Stock Aitken and Waterman. I'm into underground house music and dance music. I don't make that stuff and that's not my bag. So I'm not even sort of taking it on board. And it was a few years later where Paul Taylor, who was one of my partners in the band, he had a graphic design company in the church. Peter bought a church.
Yeah, that's right. The old Italian church on Deansgate, 380 Deansgate.
Yeah, that was by,
which is based on the Doge's Palace in Venice.
Is it really?
Yeah, it was built to look like that.
Wow, okay. It didn't look like that when we finished.
Well, don't forget there's a lot of Italians came over to Manchester in like the 1880s, 1890s and what.
Yeah, it was a beautiful building.
Yeah.
But yeah, and Paul Taylor was a DJ, nightclub DJ at Angels in Burnley.
Yeah.
And he had his graphic design company based in the church. And he came to me one day and he said, Pete's asked me to set up a new record label. It's going to be a dance label and we want you to come in with myself and his son, Paul Waterman, and we'll team up, we'll run the label, we'll sign our own records, we get carte blanche to do, because I was like, I'm not getting involved in that. It's just going to be pop. Yeah. I don't do pop, you know, And he said, no, we get carte blanche to make whatever records we want, you know. So I said, okay, well, I'll give it a go. So I came in and that's when we made Let the Music Lift You Up.
Well, I mean, yeah, but first of all, you brought Rachel McFarlane in.
That's right.
Now, she was quite a big part of it all, wasn't she?
Yeah, it was
that via you then that knew about Rachel, because you'd worked with her at?
Yeah, so we made Let the Music Lift You Up, and originally we had an a cappella, which we'd cut up from an old Detroit record. And it was it was a girl called Darlene Lewis from Detroit, and she was singing this song. And we said, right, we need to revocal it now. Who can we get who could sort of match or beat those vocals? And I said, well, Rachel. So they said, do you think we could get her? I said, well, I'll try. So we brought Rachel down and she absolutely killed it, you know, just.
Well, she was a bit picky at the time because she was very much just into church music, wasn't she? So singing in the gospel.
She was one of the best vocalists ever come out of Manchester, as you know.
Oh yeah, amazing.
But she was young, and her father was a minister as well. She was a gospel singer, and she was very much into church. So when it came down to lyrics throughout the project, we had to be sort of specify, you know, what sort of she specified the lyrics she couldn't sing or didn't want to sing, and then we had to sort of work around sort of those bits. Which, to be fair, with a lot of house music back then, it was all uplifting anyway. So sometimes Rachel could turn those songs into she was singing to God.
Yeah.
So you would get the real energy and the
feel,
feel from her, you know.
Well, because I remember, you know, you came on the Word doing "Come On, Grab Somebody." Is that what it's called?
Let the Music Lift You Up.
Let the Music Lift You Up. Yeah. So you came on the Word doing that one, and then. You also then did a version of Ketchy Jenkins, I Need Somebody.
That's right.
And she sings that a cappella opening. And you said when she did that in the studio, both you and Paul Taylor started crying because she held that note, didn't she, for about 20 seconds or whatever.
Yeah. Barrington Stewart came in and he sat there playing some chords.
The late Barrington Stewart.
That's right, yeah. And he was playing some chords. He took it really churchy, you know, he took it there. And Rachel just started singing, ad-libbing over it, and just doing her own thing. And then, again, I'm getting the goosebumps now. She just hit this note and she held it for over 20 seconds, just right up there. And me and Paul Taylor was sat at the mixing desk and we looked at each other and we both had tears coming down our cheeks. It was just that moment we knew straight away that we'd hit gold. That exact moment. And we hadn't even started recording the rest of the song yet. This was just the first sort of 20, 30 bars of the song, you know. So
I mean, she is amazing, Rachel, because well, her brother was Prince Cool, wasn't he?
Yeah.
Here Comes a Judge.
Yeah.
I think Johnny had her doing all the type backing vocals on MC Busby.
Yeah.
And that's how he found her, via Prince Cool. And then but she's had a #1 hit record with LMC, Take Me to the Clouds Above, again working with Lee Monteverdi, and you're going, well, she should be massive, really.
Yeah.
And you kind of think, well, why? Is that through choice or is that through?
I think when she was working with us, it was on the premise that she would do the house thing with us, but then she wanted really to go and work with the likes of Dallas Austin, and do R&B, and I think that was all ready to happen. And then TLC came along and the landscape changed a little bit. So I'm not sure.
Everyone forgets how huge they were.
Yeah.
How ripped off they were too. I interviewed them once, and they were virtually crying poverty then, and they were over here having had about 3 different records out.
Yeah, it's sad. Sad that's the industry back then, But she was phenomenal, Rachel.
She's still around. Yeah.
I had a singing from her last year.
Oh right, what track was that?
I was working on something with Celine Dion.
Yeah.
And
that's right. Yeah, because you asked Denise Johnson to come in on that, didn't you?
Yeah, it wasn't last year. It
was about 4 years ago.
Time goes quickly. No, I did. I was doing stuff from last year as well, but that's the last main big project she did, and I got her in as the choir master on that, and she pulled together, this choir of who's who from Manchester with Yvonne Shelton and Denise, and everybody was there. It was like I sat there. Have you
got that on tape then?
Yes, I have.
I'd love to get a copy of that.
Yeah, well, I'll give it.
Did Celine Dion even like it?
It was a favourite song.
Oh right.
Yeah.
And what was it called?
Alone. And it was written with Simon Aldred.
Right, out of Cherry Ghost. Yeah.
So we did that. Unfortunately, it didn't make the album because they decided to go down a dance electronic route, and it was a ballad, so it didn't make the album.
But you've still got it.
I have.
Sneak it to me and I'll play it. No one will care.
It's only ever had one airing, and that was at a funeral last year. Yeah, because it's quite a sort of sad song. So yeah, because we wrote it, and it was like, okay, this is Celine heard it and was like, this is about me and my husband. So she wanted to record the song. So yeah,
it's insane that she can't put her foot down.
No, I know, it's mental, isn't it?
Well, I mean, you would have thought,
but it just probably didn't fit within the sort of musical landscape of that body of work.
But you think if she liked it that much, she'd just want to put it out anyway.
Yeah, it's politics, isn't it?
What does she care?
I don't know. But there's a possibility it might still come out in the future. But I wanted to do it all in Manchester. So I had Aziz playing on it. I just took Manchester artists, string sections, gospel choirs. Everybody who played on it was basically a Manchester artist who I wanted to use on a record I was hoping would be an international smash.
Well, I remember Kirsty MacColl used all Manchester artists, didn't she, on Walking Down Madison?
That's right, yeah.
So she had the guy out of Doves, Jimmy Goodwin, Donald Johnson on drums out of ACR, Johnny Marr on guitar. It was like kind of weird.
Yeah, I don't know if it's sometimes just people bringing mates in and stuff. I don't know how everybody else's thing works. For me, it
might have been her thing because her dad, Ewan McCall, was from Salford, wasn't he?
Oh, was he really?
Yeah, he wrote Dirty Old Town.
Did he really?
Yeah, right, okay. Ewan McCall.
Wow, fair, I didn't know that.
It was massive. Yeah. He defined the folk scene in the 50s and 60s, Ewan McCall.
Right.
Influenced everyone from the Dubliners in Ireland.
Yeah.
To like all the kind of blokes over here.
Wow.
Yeah, he was massive.
Yeah.
But that was her dad.
Well, I just had this whole thing that when it comes to major artists, international, they usually sort of labels always go for the people that they know, be it in London, be it in LA, and I just thought, we got people in Manchester who can do that.
Yeah.
So, for me, it was about sort of shining a bit of spotlight on the people I've worked with over the years. So...
Well, there was always that weird thing where I remember like all the big jazz funk tracks, back in the 80s, and then Loose Ends, and I'm not even sure if before then 52nd Street didn't do it, where they'd all use all the top, like Marcus Miller, the bass player was on all the big funk records at the time, and get that proper American jazz funk sound, you know.
Yeah.
But I suppose things, I think there's a certain energy that comes out of Manchester that does.
There is.
Does kind of, I mean, I don't know why.
No.
But yeah, it's always been there. I could always spot a Manchester band or a Manchester vibe, a sound.
I think back then it was because we had nothing else to do.
Maybe,
go in the garage and smash on some drums.
Well, I mean, people forget there was a time, even in the 80s, where you couldn't get even a junior A&R man to shift his backside out of London to travel anywhere.
No. No, they wouldn't.
You know, I mean, if you lived in Dublin or Edinburgh, they'd travel because then they could have a weekend away with a girlfriend. You know, they wouldn't even necessarily leave the hotel room to go and watch the band. They'd just claim a weekend away on expenses. But, you know, a weekend in Manchester didn't seem as glamorous to them.
No, it was a big event in the early 90s and that. If a A&R person, and it could be the Scouts.
Yeah, well, that's all it ever was anyway.
It was a big event, you know.
That's all it ever was anyway.
Yeah, talk went round the city very quickly. You know, obviously it's very different now, but yeah, it was. I think, and the weird thing was you could spot a Manchester band a mile away, and you could spot a Liverpool band a mile away, and yet there's only 26 miles between us. You know, and it was like we have always had our own sound, and so have they. You know, it's a northern.
They always went for a very poppy sound. No, they kind of did.
Yeah.
You know, whereas ours would become pop.
Yeah.
But it would start off with a bit more edge. Yeah, a bit more edge to it, maybe. You know, a bit.
Well, they didn't have the Hacienda then, did they?
Well, mind you, I mean, again, was that not kind of in some way influentially a bit overrated in terms of, well, certainly in terms of indie music, I would have thought.
I can't say because I didn't go to the Hacienda back then. I used to go to like Isadora's and Lazy Littles and places like that.
Well, we'd always move around. You'd never go to the same club week in, week out. There's something a bit boring about that. Plus, because you always went out, you know, there'd be like 7 or 8 of you at least. You'd have to do what other people want.
Exactly.
You know,
but you could dip into different places.
Yeah.
I mean, with music, with dance music, I was going because I was playing in a band called Hybrid with Danny Bennett, who was another Manchester artist at the time, and we had gigs, or he had gigs all over from Quadrant Park in Liverpool to down in Plymouth. So I'd go on stage playing. So I was getting to hear all different types of dance music around the country as well. And then up north, I'd be going to, like I said, Angels in Burnley to the Gallery in Leeds. So you wouldn't stay in Manchester all the time. And so I didn't really go to the Hacienda probably till 93.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. I was in there every Friday for about 4 months, recording it all straight from the desk.
Wow.
I've got about 4 copies left somewhere from that nude night, and they keep. I made the mistake in giving it to Hooky as a favour. Hooky, well, it's not that. He said, "Oh, you know, I'll sort you out a sandwich somewhere down the line." I'm still waiting for that sandwich. You know what I mean? But it's like, but you hear the actuality from the nights I did, because we did it. We recorded it all on video. So I got together with the engineers from Key 103 at the time. And so it was recorded on video, but you've got 3 digital tracks on a video. So the 2 of them were for the stereo sound straight from the desk, and the other one, what would have the film on, was used, because it's only a bit of magnetic tape. Was used. We had two mics scaffolded into the ceiling,
like an ambient sort of.
so that you could hear all the clapping, the blowing, the whistles, and you know, like they'd applaud mixes, wouldn't they, and stuff like that. A bit like at Northern Soul, you know, if they played a top record, they'd all start applauding. So it was that vibe, and then I mixed them together, and we never got permission to put it out because no fee was agreed between Key 103 and Factory Records, you know, for the use of and all the rest of it.
It might be like the Celine thing. It might arrive at some point.
Well, I've got it there. I need to find the other ones. I mean, a lot of those, because it was all on video, so you needed a special bit of kit, which they had at Key 103. Because I remember, like, you'd have 3 channels open, and you're mixing it down onto a big spool.
Yeah,
you know, like a quarter-inch tape. You know, a real tape. You know, but weird. Different days back then. But so Loveland had a huge international hit, didn't it? With Come On Grab Some Let the Music Lift You Up, which we had you on the Word doing. That was a hit. Then you did an album with Loveland. And then it all went pear-shaped. You were just making big money. Or starting to see some money yourself.
We was doing really well. I mean, we'd had 5 top 40s, #1 dance record of the year. We was sort of one of the go-to sort of acts in the dance music scene, that if major labels had an artist and they wanted a remix, for instance, and this was from America as well, the Americans were sending over their R&B artists, but they wanted a more UK style commercial sound to it. So they'd come to ourselves or K-Class. You know, there was just a few people they would go to. So we was getting a lot of money are offered lots of money to remix or produce a lot of artists. And half of them we would turn down because we were like, no, I'm not working with them. They're too commercial. We still want to keep our dance roots.
Are there some that you regret turning down now?
No.
It was the biggest one you did turn down.
Oh, I couldn't tell you. I mean, well, no, I could tell you, but I'm not going to tell you.
Why not?
Because it's just wrong of me to say.
No, go on.
No, it's disrespectful. It's
no.
But
Tell us.
No.
It's for fun. It doesn't matter. No one cares.
No, it was just acts like Peter Andre and Mark Morrison and things
Morrison, I thought he was good.
Well, he was, but he was pop, and we were working with like Teddy Pendergrass and stuff like that. So it was a different. If we were offered sort of what I classed as R&B acts, I wanted to do what I saw at the time was the real thing, which is the US.
I love Return of the Mac.
So it was a brilliant record, you know. But I just it just wasn't for me. I wasn't into UK artists, you know. The most poppy I think we went was D-ream.
Yeah.
You know, when we produced them and remixing the likes of Kylie Minogue and stuff like that, because Pete had asked us to do some of the Peter Well back catalogue. So, but other than that, we were staying on that precipice of like one foot on the dance floor, one foot on the radio, but we had a coolish image that we needed to keep, because that's what sort of, you know, got us records played.
But then what happened? Didn't Paul Taylor left?
Yeah, well, it was more. There was a little bit going. It became a bit fractious, you know, and Paul just ended up busy with the label and was spending less time in the studio, and politics got involved with the label and stuff, and we asked Paul to leave, which was a real big mistake, and you know, I regret that. I've always regret that. And he said, "Well, I came up with a name." Yeah,
Loveland. Yeah, well, I suppose in a way he founded the project, didn't he?
Yeah. So basically, we were stopped from working under that name, and we set up a new band called Movers and Shakers, which we sort of did quite a few big records over the next sort of 18 months, 2 years. Myself and Paul Waterman, and then I left after that. I felt a bit like I needed a fresh start. And I was working with a friend of mine, Adam Ryan Carter, who was a session pianist for us.
That's Tosh Ryan of Raven Records.
Right. Yeah. It all goes back Manchester, you know, history. And we had a studio down in the basement near the BBC off Charles Street. So we just started working on stuff, and we started to audition Manchester vocalists for a new project. We didn't know what the project was going to be yet. We just wanted to try out different vocalists. And because of all the vocalists I'd been working with over the previous years, I wanted a big house diva as such, you know, that big gospel vocal. And we tried a few, but they could never match Rachel.
Yeah, that's hard to follow, isn't it?
Yeah, and Adam came in one day and he said, I was playing a jazz gig last night with this girl. She's quite folky and jazzy. We should get her down. So I was a bit like, what? No, I don't see this. And this girl called Claire come down. She turned up on...
Yeah, Claire Galton,
she turned up on... No, Canty.
Oh, is it Canty?
Yeah, Claire Canty. And she turned up on a bike. She was riding through town with this woolly hat on, and she used to have flowers hanging off a bike. It was quite quirky at the time back then. And she arrived and she started singing. I think it might have been like Ella Fitzgerald, something like that. And I was just like, I don't see this. This isn't what I'm envisaging for a project. And then I was at Cream in Liverpool, and Paul Oakenfold dropped a record, and it was the first trance type style record that I'd ever heard. And I was like, wow, what is this? So I went back to Adam and I said, we're going to start making this new type of music. And we started playing, and we came up with a song called I Can't Help Myself.
Yeah, which is weird.
Yeah, and he said, you know what about Claire for this? And I said, yeah, I think she'd be great. So we got Claire in, and she come in and sung on I Can't Help Myself, and she was the perfect fit.
She did that kind of scream almost, wasn't
it? Yeah. Well, at the time, I'd been listening to Alanis Morissette, and she used to do that, I'm a virgin, that sort of distorted voice. So I wanted to put something like that on a dance record, because I hadn't heard it before. So we had sort of this soft, waily sort of section. And then when it got to the hard part, I wanted to have some impact. So we put a few distortion pedals and, you know, and got that sort of tone, which sort of became the big hook of the record.
Lucid, but it was like that big kind of Ibiza type anthem, wasn't it?
That's right, yeah.
So, but then you actually did an album, didn't you, as Lucid?
Yeah, so we signed with Pete Tong. He was the head of A&R at London Records at the time, FFRR. And he came up and we'd done work for Pete previously as Loveland, done some remixes, and then he got in touch because the record was blowing up in Ibiza, and you know he'd been playing it everywhere, sort of seeing how big it was, and he approached us and said, "I want to sign you." So originally, it was a 2-single deal that was extended to an album, and we recorded an album, and we were looking to transition. It was sort of because I was into dance music, but Adam was into sort of indie pop,
and she had that kind of voice where she could sing anything.
Exactly,
Claire.
So so we were listening to Radiohead a lot as well. And Adam wanted us to be the next Radiohead.
Right.
Yeah, I wanted us to be sort of like Faithless. It was like this sort of mixture of sort of, you know, dance trance with sometimes you could put some real instruments into the production. So again, we recorded an album. We had a record on. There was a film at the time called Human Traffic.
Yeah, that's right. Set in Cardiff in the rave scene with John Sims.
That's correct. Yeah. And we had one of our songs in there.
I'm scared.
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 So you know, we was looking to go down that route, and we had Leeds and Reading, Glastonbury. We had everywhere booked. You know, the opening for MTV, the opening in Ibiza, and all this. And we just finished the album. I was just getting to the end of the album, mixing it, and it's about 2 weeks before, unfortunately, Adam's mum passed away, and so everything got put on hold. And then it come down to creative differences. You know, I wasn't.
I mean, that's a shame. I mean, would Adam have just said, "Or just get someone else in to play my bits"? Or
well, you can't do that when you're in a band. You know, you have to. You're there for each other.
Yeah, we can still have his share of the dough.
Yeah, but I think also as well because we'd had so much success as a dance act, or an electronic act, and we'd gone very much too far into the other direction with guitars and, you know, sort of down tempo music. I think Pete wanted to bring it a little bit back towards where we could sit in the middle. And me and Adam just had a bit of a sort of fall out at the time on that.
I mean, he's gone on to do commercials, hasn't he?
That's right, yeah.
Big commercial tunes. So what did he do?
Oh, he's done all sorts. Grouse whiskey is a big one for him.
No, what's the big one that he did? That's
Buy Any Car.
We Buy Any Car. Yes. You know, there's a big hit.
He's had a great
irritating. I don't know if there's much satisfaction, you know, artistically in that one.
I don't know. We're all different, aren't we? You know, but he's still earning plenty of money off those. So, you know, fair play to him. I spoke to Adam last week. We were chatting, so you know, we still all keep in touch. Keep in touch.
I mean, with the Lucid thing, because obviously you then went on to form Love Freaks, didn't you?
Yes.
And you know, and work with various other people. But again, why didn't you stay with Claire Galton as your vocalist?
Because again, you get to a sort of electronic music.
Was she not interested in being a star in a way? Was a part of that?
Not really. I mean, Claire had her own thing going on. You know, she liked to do jazz gigs. She liked to sort of sing folk. You know, that was her thing, which was great in a way because it married really well with what we were doing as Lucid. But with electronic music or dance music, it changes. It's cyclical. You know, it's like you get a scene and it's new for a while, and then it moves because people get bored and they go into a different type of scene. And I think it just run its course. Trance music at the time for me wasn't exciting anymore. And to be honest, I wasn't enjoying music full stop. It had gone very progressive. There wasn't any vocals in it, you know, and I loved vocals.
It sounded a bit like a pneumatic drill, some of the stuff they were doing.
It was, for me at the time, it was boys' music. Yeah. You would go in and it was just lots of lads on the dance floor just listening to instrumentals.
On Class A's.
Well, I don't know about that. But, you know, whereas I liked songs which girls would come on the dance floor and everybody would sing, and you know, you'd have a mixed dance floor, boys and girls, and everybody be singing songs and enjoying themselves. And it had gone a little bit the other way for me. So I wasn't that excited at the time.
I mean, I know before Love Freaks, you did the thing with Emmy, didn't you? More Than This. Again, from Stockport, wasn't she?
Yeah.
And then you did Loveland, where you used Little Lloydie, who'd been in Backyard Dog. Love Bug.
Yeah, I
was Love Bug.
It was. I used to joke that I was trying to get my own page on the
all the L's. Yeah. Love Bug. That's right. Yeah.
Yeah, I can't even pronounce my.
Who's the daddy?
That's
For Fred at Asda.
Yeah. Yeah, that was actually a fun project. I enjoyed that. It was almost like an aqua type English aqua.
Yeah, I remember that. Then of course, Love Freaks was the one where. I mean, your big tune with Love Freaks was sampling what was an ELO album track.
Yeah.
Shine.
Yes, that's right. So I was going through my dad's old records, and I was just looking for some inspiration, just because I just wanted something that would prick my ears up, that would give me some impetus to make some music again. And I got my dad's one of his ELO albums. And I put it on and I was flicking through it, and I come across Shine. Shine your love on your life.
Yeah. Well, that was all it was. I mean, I don't even think it was ever a single for them.
No, it wasn't. Well, it was after Weed.
Yes, exactly.
You know, but, it was, in fact, they released the greatest hits after that, and they used Shine.
I know. I was going to say, I was going to get there.
But so I sampled it and I chopped it up, and there was a band called Deep Dish at the time I was listening to, which were from the States. They had this chunky thing going, and they had a big hit called Flashdance, and at the time I sort of thought, I'd love to do something like that. So I did this record. I think it was sold about 50.
It was very Fat Boy Slimish, wasn't it?
Yeah,
in a way.
Yeah, it was just coming into that sort of sample cut up sort of thing, but and bits of disco, you know. So, and although it was ELO, it still had a disco feel to it, that song. Yeah.
So, well, a lot of their stuff did, didn't it? Yeah. You know, Last Train to London and all that, you know, in the instrumentation, the rhythm of it all.
Yeah. So basically we cut the 12-inch and put it out on the vans for the clubs again. And straight away in the first week, I think it did about 5,000 sales, and the reorders were coming in, and it was just going off everywhere. So again, labels started coming in. So, and there was a bit of a bidding war, and we signed to Positiva Records, which is EMI.
But didn't you have to do a deal with ELO first?
Well, no. We signed the record, and the idea was we were going to recreate the sample. So we went to Jeff Lynne, and I asked him for his blessing on the record, and he said, I love it. He said, does Mark want to come over to LA and we'll re-record a sample? Yeah. You know, so this is the information I was getting.
Yeah, that's what you should have done.
So, well, he was recording the Travelling Wilburys album. Yeah. And he said, look, I think they had about a 4-week schedule to finish the album, and then it overran. So, and the label were pushing to release the record. So they were like, we haven't got time to wait for you to go over and record it with Jeff, which I was absolutely mortified because I really was looking forward to working again with another legend.
Yeah, absolutely.
And going over that, you know, process of how he originally recorded it, you know.
Yeah, well, he was a genius in that way, wasn't he?
Oh, it's superb, unbelievable. There's so many producers, like I put him up there with Quincy Jones and Trevor Horn and people like that. You know, I think he's top notch. So I was really looking forward to it. Unfortunately, it didn't happen. So we just had to re-record it again with some artists or instrumentalists and from the UK musicians. And we used a Czechoslovakian orchestra and stuff. So we re-recorded it all. So none of the music you hear on the release is ELO. It's all re-recorded. But it's funny when you see people on feeds and they're like, they sampled the ELO, you know, So, but yeah, it was all re-recorded.
And yet, when you went to sort out how the cut goes in ELO, what happened then?
Oh, it was 100%.
They wanted 100%. And how did you feel about that?
You know what? I would have liked to have had a little piece of it, seeing as though there was other sections of the song that I'd written. But to be honest, the majority of the track, the strength of it was based on the back of.
Well, that did make, because I knew this story, and then I remember seeing suddenly, because obviously ELO, it didn't need the money. They were massive back in the day. And then suddenly they bring out their greatest hits about a month later because yours got to number 5 in the charts or something like that. And then they bring out their greatest hits, and it's all like the big singles, Mr. Blue Sky, Evil Woman, all that, Roll Over Beethoven, whatever. And then it's your going, don't remember that being a single. I do remember Last Train to London.
I'd like to think I had a little bit of influence on the spotlight being shined back on here.
Just probably didn't
all these big hits, but I'd like to think so. But yeah, it was nice to be sort of mentioned in the same breath as ELO, to be honest. So I just took that. But yeah, it was successful. It did its job at the time.
So after Love Freaks, you were working on different projects, but you went into the songwriting and producing side again a bit more, didn't you? So obviously you co-wrote Ne-Yo, Let Me Love You, didn't you?
Yeah. So before that, I moved down to London for a while, working in a record label, just to get a bit of more of an angle on the industry side. And I was seeing how quickly the business had changed and how quickly you had to turn records around. Because we used to be able to spend 3 months on a song just to get it right. You just wanted to get it right. Whereas then it was turning into teams of people. And there might be 8 or 10 people in the team, and they're turning records around really quickly. And I came back up north, and I was like, I could do with working with someone who's fast, because I'd spent at this point a few years at the studio,
looking for perfection.
Yeah, and I was second guessing everything. And a friend of mine mentioned his mate who I'd come across in passing, Mike Discara in Liverpool, and he said he's really quick. So me and Mike went into the studio and we wrote some songs straight away on that first day. And they were played to Stargate in New York, and they had Sia coming in. So she wrote the top line, the lyrics as such. And then they had Ne-Yo coming in at the end of the week, and they played it to Ne-Yo, and he was like, yeah, I want to record this. So we rewrote certain sections, what worked for him. And that was it. It was quite a simple process. We didn't sort of...
that was a huge worldwide hit, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was weird. It was like, I remember being on my honeymoon, I was there on the beach, and I was just thinking, it'd be great if this was a #1 record. But I wasn't expecting it,
It was #1 in the USA. Did it get to #1 in the UK?
It was #1 in the UK, and it was #6 in America. But
bad.
It was funny because I remember it going out in America, and it went in at, I think it was like 82. And I was like, oh, well, that's that then. That's because in the UK, your highest position was usually your first or second week. But in the US...
yeah, it takes a long while.
Yeah, it's a bigger market, and it has to sort of filter across all different states. So it went in at 82, and I thought, well, that's it. It's done now. And then it just started just creeping a few positions up and up and up and up. And then it got to #6. And then it was like, I think it was something like one of the top 5 most played records in America that year on radio. So it was a.
So I mean, after that, you would have thought you'd have been properly hot stuff. But I mean, one of the things with you is from the age of 19, there you were, young, good-looking lad in Manchester. Why didn't you become a name like an Adamski or something like that? Why is it like most people in Manchester don't know who you are? Yet you've done a lot more than a lot of people who everyone knows.
I never felt that comfortable.
But who does?
And I didn't like the spotlight.
It's all about make more money.
Yeah.
You have that profile.
I just wasn't brought up to be self-promoting. It was like, where I grew up, if you shouted about you as anything, you got
listen the same.
So everything had to be kept sort of, hush as such.
I had that. This guy round our way was hard as nails, 2 years older than me, Kev Crosby, his name was. And I remember like bumping into him in a pub in Urmston about 10 years ago, or no, maybe longer ago, 20 years ago. And he said to me, I remember you when we were playing football in Seymour Park, and you telling me that, when you grew up, what you wanted to do was present Blue Peter. And I thought, I never ever thought that. I never did think that. The last person on the planet I'd say that to would have been you. I'd have been walking around like that. But there was that. But again, it was almost because it was part of the business, really. So just to let people know that you were doing this, you were having this level of success, I would have thought that would have been normal.
Yeah, like I said, I mean, even when I was in bands, I was the drummer because I wanted to be in the background.
Yeah.
I never wanted to be at the front of the stage or in the spotlight. And I think when it's come to, again, over the years, self-promotion, I know you've said to me in the past, why aren't you telling
Well, it's just there's so much more money in it. I mean, even as a DJ and a mixer and all the rest of it, you could have gone out there, made a fortune just DJing.
Yeah. Yeah, I turned down a lot.
You taught Annie Savage out to DJ, didn't you?
Yeah. At PWL, we started off there with her decks. So, it's there was
you taught her how to DJ, and then you must go, blimey, this writing songs.
Yeah. Well, I wouldn't say I taught her how to DJ. Yeah. I originally stood with her, showing her stuff, and then she obviously crafted her sort of trade as such, spending many, many hours getting it better and better. But I wasn't with the DJing side. I didn't see myself as a DJ. I saw myself as an artist.
Well, being a DJ is a bit boring because you do tend to end up playing the same records night after night.
Back then it was more someone made the records and someone played the records.
Yeah.
And then over the years, it's now become where you make the records and you play the records and you earn your money from playing the records, not from making the records. So, it's become a little bit of a different model, but I liked to be on the dance floor, not in the DJ. But sometimes I'd go in with Paul, for instance, Paul Taylor, and I'd be like, mate, play that record, let's play that. And I've done lots of gigs DJing because I can DJ, but I like a night out. To be able to not worry about having to sort of be in the box playing stuff. I like to be on the dance floor.
But after the Ne-Yo stuff, you wrote stuff for Iggy Azalea, didn't you?
Yeah,
Bounce, was it? Yeah.
So with that one, basically we had Rita Ora come in, and she was singing on the song, and she'd come up for the Mobos. So she came in the studio, we recorded the song, it sounded amazing. And then her management said, could you get Iggy on this with like a little rap section? So we said, yeah, okay. So we put Iggy on it. And then her label said, we'd like more of Iggy. So we put more Iggy on, and then more Iggy. And then Rita's label went, this is now an Iggy Azalea record, not a Rita Ora record, so take Rita off it. So it was weird. It started off as a Rita Ora record and ended up as an Iggy Azalea record. So that's how that one came about, really.
And then what else have you done after that? Because I mean, you again, it's all under the radar.
Yeah, I tried different things. We did a lot of writing. We was going to New York and doing writing and different things, trying to get more into the sort of pop side. For one reason, for another, usually politics. Certain things didn't happen. I came back to Manchester and I set up a writing team, because I wanted to sort of. It was weird. I didn't realize at the time how much influence Pete Waterman had on me, but he always had this thing of working as a team, and he'd based it on Berry Gordy.
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
Sort of, and then I'd gone through this sort of similar sort of Mancunian version of PWL, which was his hit factory. And I wanted a team in Manchester who, again, will put Manchester on the map in the pop world, where labels would send their artists to Manchester and they'd go back with 5 hit records. So I took people on, and we started building a team. Again, unfortunately, it didn't work out. So, I spent quite a lot of time on that. Then obviously COVID kicked in. So that took a couple of years out of the situation. And then I just started getting back into writing again. Like I said, I did the Celine song.
Well, that was during COVID, wasn't it? Writing the Celine Dion song.
I can't remember, to be honest with you. I took a bit of time out because...
I mean, how did that happen? Was that her management approached you?
No.
I mean, you almost write a song to audition, don't you, to be included Celine Dion?
When we wrote the song, it was actually aimed at Sam Smith. Mm-hmm. It was like, myself and Simon Aldred and Ben.
So that's Cherry Ghost, Simon Aldred, who actually did a full album with Liam Gallagher, perhaps his best one.
That happened after, but he was telling me, and he was singing some of the songs, and it was great, So, there was myself, him, and Ben Blease, and we sort of wrote the song, and it was. I said, let's write something for
Sam Smith,
because Simon had already written a song for Sam Smith. So I was like, let's do some. And Sam heard it and he was like, I love it. He said, but I write my own songs.
Oh, right. Yeah.
So it was like, oh, okay. No problem.
Now I've gone big.
I don't know about that. But the point is, it was then played to Celine's A&R man, and he played her some songs, and she said, "That's my song there." So that's how that came about.
So when you demoed that song, who sang the lead bits on it? Oh, Simon.
Yeah.
And then you ended up using the late Denise Johnson from Primal Scream in a certain ratio on it. You used Rachel McFarlane, Yvonne Shelton, so all the sort of, girls from Manchester.
Yeah. It was, again, like I said, I wanted to get what I saw as the best of the best from Manchester on the record.
And Celine never ended up recording it.
She recorded it.
Oh, she recorded it?
Yeah, she recorded it. She used to have ballet practice and dance practice every day, and that was the song she would...
Oh, right.
She absolutely loved that record.
So why did it not appear in one of her albums?
It just wasn't the right fit for the album. When they got all the body of music together, it just wasn't the right fit.
Is she sitting on it for another Titanic movie?
Apparently. That's what has been mentioned. However, she's had health issues since, so we'll just have to wait and see if it ever sees the light of day, I
mean, how do you feel about it when you've heard it?
Well, I feel it emotional because it hits me because it was written with a certain, meaning. And I feel it's one of my best works. I spent a long time.
It's so frustrating.
Well, if it's meant to be, it'll find its way out there at the end of the day, won't it?
I need to hear it now.
It might be one of my legacy.
I'll nick it off you. So at the moment, obviously, you're still around. You've got a studio that's being built in your house.
Yes.
Is that going to be like the Motown Studios then?
Well, I'd like to think so. I mean, I had a place in the centre of Manchester, but again, during lockdown, I realised that it wasn't all about work. I needed to spend more time with family. So we've moved sort of a little bit more into the sticks, and I want to build this nice studio. So that's being built at the moment, so people can just come and live at my house and use the studio when they want.
And we need you now for everyone to know you are Mark Hadfield from Droylsden. Big time.
Non-promotional Mark Hadfield from Droylsden.
Listen, Mark, been fantastic speaking to you today. Let's
you.
do it again.
Yeah, anytime.
Some gaps to fill in.
Oh yeah, there's plenty.
Hope you enjoyed the video. To see more, subscribe to my channel. Just click on the link below.